How's it going, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. And last night we had the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, and it did not disappoint in the slightest. And not only was the season finale just an amazing episode, but it probably contained some of the best Star Wars scenes, period, there's ever been. So we're going to break down everything that happened in this final episode. So if you have not seen the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian and you are trying to avoid all spoilers, this is your chance to click away. But if you've seen it, or you simply don't care about spoilers, let's begin. The opening scene starts out with Boba taking out the T-41 that Dr. Pershing is on. From there, Din and Cara board the ship. The pilot ends up holding Dr. Pershing hostage after shooting his own comrade. We find out that Cara actually has a pretty big backstory, as the pilot mentions Alderaan. Cara lost somebody dear to her on Alderaan, and we learn that the pilot was on the Death Star at one point in time but got off, but clearly lost some friends and possibly family when the Death Star blew up. Cara shoots him in the face, and we end up finding out that Dr. Pershing is a clone scientist, which we kind of already knew because of the badge. They then head out to find Bo-Katan and Reeves. And as they land, we can see Bo-Katan's ship, the Gauntlet, as it's docked, the same exact ship she had from the Clone Wars. They end up finding Bo and Koska, and they ask for their help. But things get really heated between Boba, Bo, and Koska, because there is a long history here. After hearing Boba's voice, Bo says, "You're not a Mandalorian. You are a disgrace to that armor," in which Boba replies that it was his father's. Then Bo says, "Don't you mean you're donors?" Now, for those of you who may not know, Boba is, in fact, a clone of Jango Fett. However, Boba is different from every other clone that was ever created. You see, Boba was an unaltered clone, which means that it didn't age super quickly like all of the other clones, but for the most part was a normal child. Jango specifically made one clone to be this way so he could raise him as his son. And that's what he did. Boba was a son to Jango, and Jango was Boba's father. Now, the history goes a little bit further back than these taunts right here that we see in the episode. Now, Boba's armor comes from his father Jango, and Jango's armor comes from his father. He was once the true leader of Mandalore. Now, Jango Fett had a mentor, Jaster Meriel. When the Civil War broke out on Mandalore, Jaster was killed by Tor Vizsla of the opposing faction. The war finally ended when Jango ended up killing Tor. So Boba is the son of the true Mandalorian. Now, of course, we know that Jango Fett would ultimately go on to get killed by Mace Windu. So it's kind of a good thing that Boba took off during this before the end when Luke Skywalker showed up, because he doesn't exactly have good feelings toward the Jedi. But Bo-Katan, during the Clone Wars, was a part of the Death Watch faction, the opposing faction of Jango and the faction that killed Jaster Meriel. So there was already pretty high tension between Bo-Katan and Boba Fett. And since Boba is one of the millions of clones of Jango, Bo and Koshka recognize his voice and realize that he is a clone, which is why she says it's a disgrace for him to wear that armor. Now, eventually they stop fighting, realizing that this is why their planet got torn apart in the first place by the Civil War, and ultimately decide to help. Bo-Katan decides to help if she can get the dark saber from Moff, because whoever holds the dark saber gets to rule Mandalore. And as we've learned, the people have been exiled by the Empire from going back to Mandalore, and they decide that it's time to take back their world, which is why they need the dark saber. From here, they form a plan to board Moff's ship, using the help of Dr. Pershing, who we find out isn't necessarily evil, since he never really wanted to kill the child in the first place, but is merely a scientist that is kind of being held captive by the Empire. But he doesn't really have a loyalty to the Empire, and he doesn't want the child to die, which is why he's helping. The Doctor informs them of the Dark Troopers who they met before, because they're the ones who took Baby Yoda. But they figure out a plan to get past the Dark Troopers, and they put on a little ruse to get on board the ship. Boba acts like he's trying to take down the ship, and once the ship docks, heads off into jump space. Now, the whole entire time this is happening, Moff Gideon clearly realizes that this is a trick. He doesn't want them to dock in the first place and deploys TIE fighters to keep them away, but they get on board anyways. Now, Mando makes it right to the Dark Troopers just in the nick of time. Only one manages to get out, and he puts up a heck of a fight against him. Luckily, he has the Beskar spear, which will definitely come in handy in just a bit. Bo, Cara, Fennec, and Koshka completely devour everybody in their path as they make their way to the bridge. This was a truly awesome scene to see. But of course, Moff is not there because he knew this was a trick the entire time. Instead, he went to find Baby Yoda and is with him in the cell. When Mando shows up, Moff is holding the Darksaber over Grogu. They talk and eventually come to an agreement. Mando just wants the child, and Moff just wants to keep the Darksaber. So they make an agreement. Mando gets to take the child, and Moff gets to keep the Darksaber. Mando does not care about the Darksaber, as we've learned. He told Bo that she could have it. He doesn't really care about ruling Mandalore. And of course at this point he just wants Grogu back. But of course it's a trick by Moff. When Mando goes to get the child, he attacks him with the Darksaber. But fortunately the only thing that the Darksaber can't cut through is Beskar, which of course is what his entire armor is made out of. And his spear is pure Beskar, which leads us to a very epic fight between Moff and Mando. Eventually Din manages to defeat him. He takes the Darksaber and Moff and he heads to the helm to join the others. And this is where things get a little bit complicated and we actually have a little bit of unresolved issues. Now when Din enters the helm holding the Darksaber in his hand along with Moff Gideon and the other, we can see a very troubled look on Bo-Katan. And this is because she knows that Mando beat Moff in hand-to-hand combat claiming the Darksaber from him, which means that she knows she will now have to fight Din in hand-to-hand combat and win the Darksaber from him. We find this out when we hear about the rules of the Darksaber and ruling Mandalore. You must defeat the wielder of the Darksaber in hand-to-hand combat and win it from them. So now the only way that Bo-Katan can get the Darksaber is to defeat Mando in combat. However, Mando again doesn't really care. He doesn't want to rule Mandalore, he only wanted Grogu. So he offers it up freely. He says, "I yield, it's yours." But she can't accept it. She wants it done the right way. She wants to be the rightful ruler. Now this is where it ends and we don't get a resolution as the Dark Troopers return. Mando ejected the Dark Troopers out into space, and the force of the ejection pushed them really far back, but they have thrusters and they are able to fly back once the momentum of them being ejected wears off. So they board the light cruiser, form back in order, and go to attack them. Moff Gideon laughs as he knows that there's no way that they're going to be able to defeat the Dark Troopers. There's around 40 to 50 Dark Troopers and blasters can't penetrate their armor. They're basically useless against them. Mando alone could barely defeat one of them. Now he's dealing with 50. Moff laughs. He knows he's won. Din, Bo, and the others seem to know that they can't take them on either. It seems like Moff has won until a reading is picked up and we see one single X-Wing show up. As the X-Wing shows up, we all of a sudden see Grogu reacting to something. He of course senses the pilot of the X-Wing and he senses the Force. Kara jokes and says, "One X-Wing, we're saved." But as it turns out, even though she was joking, she was right, as that one X-Wing was piloted by Luke Skywalker. We see a cloaked figure board the ship, armed with a green lightsaber and a glove over the hand, moving very much like Luke Skywalker. He walks through the Dark Troopers like they are nothing, literally walks through. He isn't running, he isn't shuffling to try and not get hit. He is literally walking through these Dark Troopers. They are nothing to a Jedi Master, which he now is. Using a combination of lightsaber techniques and the Force, he makes his way up the elevator to the final batch of Dark Troopers. We then get a scene that is very much a mirror scene of the Darth Vader Rogue One scene. Arguably the best Darth Vader scene of all time. And now his son, Luke Skywalker, gets the same scene in true epic fashion. Again, using the Force and a lightsaber, he walks through them and makes his way to the blast door. Moff, realizing that it's Luke Skywalker that has come, tries to kill himself, but Kara stops him. Then of course, realizing that it's a Jedi who has come for Grogu, Din tells them to open the door. He enters, takes off his hood, and it's Luke Skywalker. Din asks, "Are you a Jedi?" in which he responds, "Yes." Luke reaches for the child. It is now time for Grogu to go with Luke and learn the ways of the Force and the Jedi. Grogu is hesitant and Din can see this. He tells Luke he doesn't want to go with you. But Luke explains that Grogu actually does want to go with him, but he wants Mando's permission because he loves him. He's grown attached to him. He doesn't want to leave, but he knows that he has to. He picks up Grogu and promises him that he'll see him again. Grogu reaches out and touches Din's helmet, in which Din removes his helmet. This is another mirror scene from episode 6, when Vader takes off his helmet so he can see his son Luke with his own eyes. We see how emotional it is for Din to let Grogu go. Grogu has basically become his son, but he tells him not to be afraid. He places him down, and Grogu wraps his arms around his leg before ultimately going to Luke and R2-D2. An interaction between R2-D2 and Grogu make it seem like they actually know each other. And perhaps they did before Grogu was taken, or R2-D2 could simply recognize that he's the same species as Yoda. Luke, being the Jedi who connected with Grogu when he reached out with the Force on the Seeing Stone, is there to take Grogu away to train him in the ways of the Force and the Jedi. He picks him up, leaves, and we see a very emotional Din. And that is the end of the season until we get to a post-credit scene. We are back on Tatooine in Jabba's palace, where we see Bib Fortuna on Jabba's throne. He was Jabba's right-hand man, but unfortunately meets his demise when Fennec and Boba show up. Boba then sits on the throne, and we get an announcement that a Boba Fett series is coming Christmas 2021, titled The Book of Boba Fett. And it's interesting that they didn't announce that at Disney's Investors Day when they announced basically everything. But saving it for a really cool post-credit scene makes a lot of sense as well, and I'm glad they did. So there's the Season 2 finale breakdown of The Mandalorian. How did you feel when Luke Skywalker showed up at the end? And do you think Grogu and Mando are going to reunite in Season 3? Or do you think that he might run into Kylo Ren at one point in time, since Kylo was also one of the students of Luke? Let me know all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.